everybody. We are Op and Court from Dandelion Branding, and welcome to EnvironMental Podcast.
Yeah, this is our podcast where we deep dive into different aspects of sustainability, and then we have very simple conversations about it. If you like that type of content, please like and subscribe. We post about twice a month, so you can get really great sustainability content.
And today we are honored to be joined by Charlotte Opal, the Executive Director of the Forest Conservation Fund. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. We've partnered with Forest Conservation Fund for maybe about 9 months now, I think. Maybe even more, actually.
I think
a little longer.
Almost a year, do you think, Charlotte?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Oh my goodness. So excited to meet you and to just hear more about all the incredible things that you're working on. So can you tell us a little bit about Forest Conservation Fund?
Sure. So we're a nonprofit based in Switzerland. We have a staff member in Indonesia and a staff member in Nairobi. And really what we do is we connect donors and companies and foundations, anyone who wants to support conservation of tropical rainforests with excellent conservation projects in the field. So we don't do the conservation ourselves. We find communities that have the rights to manage their forests or private landholders that want to protect their forest, and we match them with donors that are, just want to do the right thing, recognize that we're losing our forests really quickly and we can't afford it. And so we just try to make it easy for them to connect directly with projects and then tell the stories from the field about the impact, and then they can share that with their own stakeholders.
Love it. That was something that we felt so connected with your organization about, was just how you told those stories of all of the specific projects that you were working on. And that just felt so incredibly transparent and And that was really what we initially were so connected to.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, we're a startup. So that's basically all we do is just share, it's just connect and share information. We don't have a long history. So we're really just focused on this. And there's so many amazing things about forests, and especially about the indigenous people and the communities that live in them. There's so many stories to tell. So we're excited about doing that.
How do you choose projects?
So we're really focused on the forest that's at risk of deforestation for agriculture commodities. So agriculture is really driving most deforestation today. And so we're looking at those forests that are on the frontier of those deforestation landscapes, and then helping them connect with conservation funding to protect them from conversion. And so the projects we're looking for have to be new, just set up. So there's a lot of forest out there that isn't in a park, isn't in a protected area. So it's really at risk of turning into a farm. And so we find projects that were just recently moved into conservation, and where the community is either directly managing it themselves or they have the ownership rights. And they're working with an NGO, the nonprofit, to manage it. So we're working only in tropical rainforest countries and really looking for those projects that are in landscapes where there's palm oil or cocoa or coffee or soy, cattle, those kinds of the commodities that are really driving deforestation.
Can I ask you why you're specializing in tropical rainforests?
Yeah, so tropical rainforests house like half of our global biodiversity. They store so much carbon. I think there's 90 years worth of carbon emissions locked up in our forests, and tropical rainforests especially. And there was also the deforestation that's happening is really happening in tropical areas. So there are forest fires, obviously, but the man-made deforestation is really happening in the tropics. So our forests in the north, in Russia or in Canada or in the US, they're being degraded, like overlogged, but it's not the same thing as really like converting to farms. So when we looked at really what's driving permanent forest loss. It's really in the tropics and it's really agriculture. So that's why we're focused there. And yeah, we're really answering these kind of twin crises of climate change as well as biodiversity. Tropical rainforests are essential for housing our biodiversity, but then also all of the services they provide us. So pollinators for important tree crops live in the forest for coffee, for instance, live in the forest. So they need the forest to thrive. Those farms need the forest to thrive. They provide us with clean water. They reduce the local temperature locally, which is in response to climate change. We really need to keep our forests there to just keep our planet cooler. So that's really why we're focusing on these tropical landscapes.
I also like that you're working, what really pulled me in was that you're working on regenerative projects. You actively go for choosing regenerative projects, and sometimes those regenerative projects are like regenerative agriculture projects as well. And I assume that that's something that you guys are really focusing on, especially with your focus in agriculture.
Yeah, so we really work with the forests directly and not really with farms, but a lot of the communities are also farming next door. And so part of the integrated approach to forest conservation is that if the community is thriving on the land that they've already cleared, they can afford to protect that forest because they have a decent livelihood that is in harmony with nature. So we do fund these they're called alternative livelihoods, but it's basically finding a livelihood that's sometimes in the forest. So it could be collecting forest products, it could be even ecotourism, or it's having a good livelihood next to the forest. And so using the forest the way you have been, maybe to collect additional food or to go fishing, but then have a sustainable farming project next door. And so while we aren't really doing a lot of we aren't really doing the regenerative agriculture ourselves, the communities that we work with can use our money to do that on their own.
Okay. That's great.
I mean, I guess one thing I would add is that the forest, if we just protect it, if we just leave it alone, it can regenerate itself. So nature is really the best tree planter. So even some of our forests are really pristine, never been really touched, never been logged. But some of our forests have been affected by humans in the past. But really what we're seeing is that if we can just fund the patrols, the education, the signs, then nature can restore itself actually, and she can regenerate. She's the best at regenerating herself. You can never recreate a tropical rainforest from a nursery. There's hundreds of species. So if we can just, if it's a healthy enough forest and there's a good species mix and we just leave her alone, let the animals do their thing, let the bees do their thing. It's actually not that expensive to just improve our standing forests. Let them do it themselves.
Okay. I mean, that makes perfect sense. I think that's great. I would like to know a little bit more about the project that we're funding. You had mentioned that you could talk a little bit about it, but I'd love to.
Yeah, sure. So we have 10 projects right now all over the tropical belt. So we have almost 100,000 hectares under protection. And we have projects in the Amazon, so in Brazil and Peru. We have a project in Ivory Coast, and we're looking at a new project in Cameroon. And then we have a lot of projects in Asia. And so we have one in the Philippines, Malaysia, I think 4 now in Indonesia. And then we have a project in Papua New Guinea. And that's the project that Dandelion Brandon is supporting. So Papua New Guinea is, I want to say they have 5% of global biodiversity just in that one country. It's an incredibly diverse place for nature and for languages. There's hundreds of tribal languages there, and it's an amazing place. And it is still heavily forested, but the forest is disappearing for lots of different things. And that's really why we suggested this project to you all, is because it's not just palm oil. It's not just pulp and paper for packaging. It's coconut, coffee, cocoa, timber. P&G is really, it's a source for mined products like nickel and gold. And so it's going for the things that we all buy every day and that the companies you work with, use. So we thought it would be a good fit in terms of thinking about our own impact and the products that we buy. We buy all of those things and we're reliant on those tropical landscapes for those things. And so it's really about trying to compensate for that by saying, okay, I recognize that I have a plantation footprint. I love drinking coffee. Coffee grows in the tropics. And so I have a little plantation that's just for me for coffee. And I'd like to have a forest footprint as well. So we call that protect your forest footprint. And so the project in Papua New Guinea really allows you to think about that, like I'm buying coconut and gold and all these things and saying, okay, I have a little piece of forest in Papua New Guinea that is compensating for my impact in the world. And Papua New Guinea is also a really special place because it has this very strong indigenous culture. And actually the indigenous people own like 95% of the country already. They have very strong land rights, which is something you don't see in a lot of places. And you guys have probably seen, violence against land rights defenders and really discrimination against indigenous people. And Papua New Guinea is very different. They're a very proud culture, very highly majority indigenous culture. And so this community, Ina, the Fagagara clan, which is like a family group, they love their forest. They use it. They have a spiritual connection with it. They rely on it for their life, but also their identity. And they wanted to declare their area a wildlife management area, basically a conservation area. And in Papua New Guinea, because they have strong land rights, that was easy for them to do, relatively easy. So we have a local partner there called Partners with Melanesians, and they help this community get their paperwork in order, in line with the government, and send all their stuff in, and make maps and prove that they use the area. And then they got their land rights recognized, I think in 2018. And so we started working with them almost right from when we launched in 2020. And we said, this is a great project because, like I said, it touches all those commodities. It's a very special place. And so any the Dandelion branding support goes there, and any individual that wants to just adopt a hectare, we will send that money to them. And they've used it so far. They did a big biodiversity study. They wanted to know what endangered species were in their forests because no biologist had really ever been out there. So they did a big wildlife survey. And then they also have now made signs and done community education about what can you do in the forest. So our model is not one where you lock up the forest and you can't go in and use it. It's just saying we're going to use it responsibly. So there are rules, you can go in there and collect medicinal plants and, fruit and the things the honey, the things that they've been doing. But you can't hunt endangered species and things like that. So they've been using it for educating the community to, just live in harmony with the forest. And so, they want to build a ranger station where, we're looking for new funding always looking for funding for them because they have these regular expenses. And then they have a patrol team. A lot of what we fund is really these community patrols because there is illegal logging going on there. Some of our projects, there's illegal mining happening. So you do need to patrol the forest to make sure that people aren't going in and hunting or logging. And so they need kind of permanent funding ongoing for that.
Yeah, and that's what you were mentioning before about needing to actively protect forests. That it's not enough to just say we're anti-deforestation, but there's all of this other illegal activity happening. Do you see that a lot?
Yeah, I mean, 80% of protected areas are not protected, and you just see national parks disappearing. In Indonesia, in Ivory Coast has lost 90% of its forests. And there's this famous example of some scientists that went into all of the forest reserves. So that's it's not a national park, but it's a managed forest. So you're not you can take logs out if you have a sustainable logging plan, but it's supposed to stay a forest. So, and they have a lot of biodiversity in there. So this group of scientists went down to look for chimpanzees I think 20 years after they had done a study of the numbers of chimpanzees. And basically every reserve that they went to, and almost all of the national parks, was one big cocoa farm. They had been completely converted to cocoa for chocolate. So there weren't any more chimpanzees there. So just declaring a forest protected is not the same as protecting it. And when there's a lot of pressure, I mean, these are people that need good livelihoods. They need farms. They were just small farmers. It wasn't like a big evil corporation. But if, you know, we have to protect these forests or they're going to go. And so we need to find better sustainable livelihoods for those people, and we need to just actively protect the forest. And the good news is that it's not that expensive. So once you have the legal standing, you know, it is illegal if people come in and settle there or log there or whatever. So you have that piece of paper. The community is empowered through that to say, no, you can't be in here doing that activity. Here's the proof. So that's very important. And then just being there and just walking and doing the patrols, having signs up. But it's not that expensive. Once the community knows, oh, this area is actually protected, I can't go in there and do bad stuff, then they start to leave it alone. I mean, you have to always be vigilant, but you come to kind of a stable, like similar to how parks in the US are, people don't go in there and do illegal activities very much. So, but those patrols, you know, you can never stop doing patrols, and that does cost money. When we looked at, and because we work in tropical countries where the wage costs are not as high, we looked at the costs of protecting, like I said, this footprint idea. So thinking about, I have a little bit of Brazil where I have my coffee or whatever, and a little bit of Nicaragua where I have my cocoa or whatever. And I have this conservation footprint. How much does that cost? So we looked at the yield of these products and how much it costs me to buy like a ton of palm oil and then to protect a forest the same size. And it basically adds, depending on the product, 1% to 2% to the cost. So when we saw that, so really, like if I have 100 football fields for me, I can protect 100 football fields of forest for just 1% to 2% more. And so we looked at that, we thought, okay, well, this seems affordable. This seems like something that companies can do to really go forest positive. And we're really looking at companies that want to be deforestation free, but recognize that that's not the same thing as protecting forests. And then protecting forests is actually not that much more expensive than doing the deforestation free part.
Wow. So you touched a little bit about the legality of this stuff, and like, have you had, in your experience, have you had folks kind of have to bring things to court, like when people are illegally using the protected land? Like, is that something that happens often?
So not in our projects, but it is something that happens in other conservation projects. Yeah. Usually it would be the police that they would go to. So for instance, in our projects, you can't carry armed. We don't allow our grantees to have weapons. But if they do come across illegal loggers, and that has happened, in the case that I know of that happened in one of our projects, it didn't turn violent. But what we recommend is that they immediately go and bring the police back, that they don't intervene in that moment. And that they come with the legal authorities there, because they don't have the power to arrest, depending on the country, but usually they wouldn't have the power to arrest the person. It can get dangerous. We're not working in like elephant ivory trading situations, so that can get really militarized. We're not working in those rural hotspots yet, but so it's certainly something that communities should not enter into lightly. The perpetrator would be prosecuted through the courts, but it's not the community taking that person to court. They were breaking the law, so the police just arrest them and go through the procedure. Okay. So what we do see, and we do satellite monitoring of our areas, of our conservation areas, And there you wouldn't see illegal logging. That's hard to see from a satellite, but you would see conversion to farms. It does happen. Some, I mean, like out of the 100,000 hectares, I think we've had 10 that have been converted. And because we're doing regular monitoring, we can catch it immediately. And so then we send those coordinates to the community and we say, there was this, it's called an alert. So basically the satellite is going over the area every few weeks. And when they see a change in color from green to brown, they send us an alert. So we send the coordinates to the community. They have GPS devices that they can buy with the money that we send them. And they go out to the area and then they'll tell us what's going on. And so in every case, it's been someone from the community that didn't know. Sometimes they were right on the edge and they didn't realize they were in the park. Sometimes they didn't know it was a park at all because this is very early on and there weren't signs, or maybe the signs weren't in the right place. And then we always recommend that you just have a conversation and you try to get the person to leave. And because they caught it quickly, they haven't like invested in fancy plants, a whole nursery and a plantation. And usually they don't want to be in an illegal area and they want to leave. So far we haven't had anything bad. But that's really our philosophy, is that if you catch it early, you can fix the situation. There are some national parks in Indonesia or in Central America or like Ivory Coast, like I said, where the whole park has been turned into farms, and you can see it happen. It starts slow. A few people go in and nothing happens to them. And then their neighbor's like, well, nothing happened to that guy. And then it just disappears. So you really have to get out there early and say, nope, this area is protected. There are patrols. The community wants it protected. And then they'll leave voluntarily. So far, that's how it's worked.
Good. Yeah. Testament to being vigilant and having such regular communication with those communities. So that's great.
Yeah, I think that's really great. You also talked about how it's oftentimes not like a big conglomerate that's just coming in and wiping everything out. It's small farmers, which that makes sense to us. And we were just talking about the case in the UK where Greenpeace dropped boulders into a protected area to stop bottom trawling, because it's the same story. It's a protected area, but it's still being fished, or so this is happening everywhere. And what I found, and it sounds like it's kind of the same thing, it's like the earth doesn't have a large voice, but the communities are built around these, like, I need to use this land to make money, and I need, and that's quite a bit louder than the planet's, pain that doesn't have its own voice. And I like this idea that the first thing you said was we need to find better sustainable livelihoods for these groups of people. And I'm kind of wondering if like you had some examples of like what you've seen as better, like more sustainable livelihoods for those groups.
Yeah, it's really interesting that the animals can't defend themselves, the plants can't defend themselves. So we're in this context where we're trying to find humans that have aligned interests. And so indigenous people are a very big candidate pool for that, because they want the forest to stay there. They get their livelihood and identity already from it. They're not always farmers. They're collecting products. They might be farming a little bit, moving around farming, but they're not like settled, stable farmers. They're really forest stewards. They don't see themselves necessarily as separate from this ecosystem that we're trying to protect. So the opportunity to work with them, they're the best. There's been now scientific studies, at least in Latin America, that areas that are managed by indigenous people are much better managed even than national parks.
Yeah.
Because they want to. So when we talk about alternative livelihoods, then we're talking more about people that have moved away from that a bit, maybe. So they're farmers, they're settled, but they still have a strong relationship with the forest. Like many people in the UK or the US do. They use it for leisure activities. They use it for, there's still sacred trees in there. There's special foods that they need from the forest. So there's an opportunity also with, they're not forest peoples necessarily, but they're living next to it and they're forest friendly. And so in that case, then we're looking at how can we get them an even better livelihood from what they're farming now? So that's the regenerative agriculture component, linking them up maybe with markets that are interested in linked conservation and farming. And then potentially exploiting the resource that they're already, the way they're using the forest, getting more money out of it without over harvesting, without doing damage. But maybe it's a matter of keeping the whatever product they're gathering, getting it to market, getting the health and safety requirements if they want to sell it abroad, even improving like storage, because they might collect the same amount, but they could sell twice of it because it's not rotting. So and that's broadly called non-timber forest products. That's the word that people use. So it's things like honey, different bamboo, and it's called rattan, like you can make furniture out of it, and that's an Indonesian one. There's actually a big local market for wild fruits, medicinal plants. And then in Peru, so to speak specifically to a project that we're working with in Peru, they have aguaje. It's like an acai. It's like one of these Amazonian superfruits that only grows wild. And so they have it in this forest. And so they're going to look at, how do the harvesting of it, it turns into like a juice, like a pulp, like acai.
Okay.
So how do they store it and things like that? So that's something they're looking at. Other projects, one of our projects in Indonesia, they were doing a patrol and they came across a cave that looks very old, with human remains and everything, kind of gruesome. And so they're actually going to get a cultural expert out to see what this is and maybe turn it into like a tourism destination. So I would say ecotourism, cultural tourism is another thing that the communities we work with are excited about. So it's very bespoke to the area, what they can collect, what they can do, how far away they are. So actually the PNG project in Papua New Guinea, it's only a 3-hour drive from the capital. So it actually could be a good candidate for ecotourism. So that was another reason why they wanted to do this biodiversity study, was to figure out what do we have that people, especially birders, would want to see. Because Papua New Guinea has these amazing birds of paradise that do these crazy dances. So they have some of those. So I would say it's going to be small businesses, very natural product oriented. That's what the alternative livelihoods component is going to be.
I love that. I love so much of it is about improving the efficiency of what they're already doing, which is just another aspect of being more sustainable, is doing more with the same amount or with less.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. So exciting. I want to go I would go ecotourism in Papua New Guinea for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they're getting on it. I mean, right with COVID, tourism has really gone down, but it'll come back. Yeah.
It will soon.
You mentioned, I think, that you started Forest Conservation Fund in 2020. Is that right?
Yeah, we're really a startup. I mean, a nonprofit, but a startup. Yeah. We were just seeing that there's so many companies and consumers that want to not be linked with deforestation. But when you see how it's being implemented, it's really avoiding risk. So saying, okay, well, I'm going to buy from this company that has that's had a farm there for 50 years. They're not deforesting anymore. So I'm not linked with deforestation. But then the forest isn't protected. So it's just going to go for somebody else. And so seeing that happen, I've been working in sustainable supply chains my whole career. Just saying, okay, well, we need to get out there and protect that forest, because this no deforestation is not the same thing as forest positive, as forest conservation. you have to do both. You have to clean up your supply chain. You can't be buying from companies that are deforesting, obviously. But we need to get out there and proactively protect this forest because it's going so quickly. They're negotiating right now. It's called the Convention on Biological Diversity. It's like the climate change convention for biodiversity. And they have these global goals of protecting 30% of the planet by 2030 and 50% by 2050. But honestly, at this rate, we're not going to have 50% of the planet left to protect by 2050. So it was just this like frustration of like, let's just make it easy to get money to the forest protectors. That's really what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. I kind of feel like, and this is just something I've been feeling recently, because we have these talks and we spend so much of our time talking with people who are very actively involved in sustainability measures. It feels to me like, I mean, we're in a bubble, but it feels to me like there's so many people working on protecting the planet and in sustainability. Why are we still working at a deficit here? Like, how is this possible? But I guess like we're all small startups trying to have our impact. All together we're making a real impact, but it's still small. It's still the minority.
Yeah, but I think the education that even a small group can do has a huge outsized impact, because once you make the decision to change what you purchase, to switch to a different brand, then you buy that product all the time. So it has this impact over the long term. And that is something that we do every day, is we buy consumable goods. We buy food, at least. So just, it's maybe a small change in the moment, but it's actually something you can do every day just without even having to work for a sustainable company or anything, So anything that, I mean, when you look at the impact that these small or smaller groups, NGOs have on the conversation and education and how that moves the needle, I think we are moving in the right direction. It's not fast enough, but I mean, if you look back, like in the last 10 years, like I said, hundreds of companies have signed these no deforestation pledges, and that's just in the last 10 years. And that's because of people talking about it and having conversations like this and hearing about it and saying, this is something easy for me because those options are here. Now it's easy to do conservation. It's easier to clean up your supply chain. So I'm just going to do it, and that is going to have a forever impact.
Yeah, exactly. I like that outlook a lot. Thank you. Wow.
So how can companies partner with you?
Well, we have projects all over the world, like I said, the tropical belt. So what we encourage companies to do is find a landscape that's of interest to them. Maybe they're buying commodities from, ingredients from there. Maybe they have ties for, cultural ties or employee ties or something like that. Maybe it just speaks to them. So you can explore the projects on our website. They all need funding. Our website is fundforests.org with an S. And then we encourage them for a big donation. They can choose the projects that they want to sponsor, and we would ideally hope that they sponsor over the long term. And then they get those stories that we were talking about before. So we're doing the regular monitoring of the projects with the satellite, but then the project is also sending us their activity reports, a lot of photos, sometimes video, and then we send those through to the companies and they can use them how they want. Like, so some of them are using it in their internal employee, like workplace kind of pages. Some of them are speaking about it with their customers. So we have the supermarket in the UK that included something in their flyer about the community in Indonesia that they're supporting. So it's really up to the company how they want to use it, but we're really trying to match them with a project that's meaningful for them so that they are proud to talk about it and they feel connected. They can go visit the project maybe if that is in the future, if that's an option. So we're trying to encourage these direct relationships. So we would encourage companies to see what they like on our website.
Fantastic. And we will absolutely link the site in the copy here, and also on the Living Brand Directory article.
Awesome.
I don't know if I have any other questions. Thank you so much for letting us pick your brain and for all that you do.
It's not me, it's the communities, but I'm just telling you about it.
I mean, that's a lot.
But yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you guys for your work and your inspiration. It's so nice to be working with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, we'll see you on the internet because we always talk to you. But thank you for joining, everybody, and for listening. And make sure to check out funforests.org, right?
Yes.
Funforests.org.
And we have a Twitter handle also, Fund Forests.
Fun Forest. Do we follow each other? I need to write that down.
Sure, probably.
We should. Yeah.
We probably do. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks everybody
Great.
for watching. All right.
Thanks. Bye.